Welcome back to the channel, you Ultramarines enjoyers. This is Sprues and Studs, and I'll have to say, lately you guys have been eating good on this channel. You've had the release of the collector's edition of Titus as well as the squad, the comparison of the regular versus collector's edition of Titus and his squad, and now we have this video which will feature the side-by-side comparison of older man Calgar versus the new school Space Marine 2 Calgar. We shall see how much JoyToy has progressed or even regressed in the past 2 to 3 years as we weigh in the differences between these two figures. So straight off the bat, the most obvious difference between the two chapter masters is the size. Excuse the shininess of the ruler, but the old one stands around 5 inches from head to toe, and the new one is 6 inches from head to toe. And at this size and scale, that 1 inch difference is absolutely insane looking. When you're looking at the proportions of the old one, it just looks stubby and chunky, as if the size of the arms and gauntlets don't match the scale of the rest of the body. The newer one scale looks, well, about right. Nothing is too big or too small when you're comparing certain sizes and areas. Another thing that I wanted to point out is this OG version is super top heavy, which leads to a lot of posing problems in that he just wants to topple over. The new guy, however, stands tall and proud with no issues whatsoever. Oh yeah, and just a side note, if you're just passing by, help this content creator out by subscribing to this channel. A whopping 70% of you are not subbed to this channel, which makes Marneus weep in disappointment. And you do not want to fail your chapter master, so help your fellow brother out and smash that subscribe button. So I would say the biggest difference in the helmet is literally the size of this dome protector. This new one is about 3/4 of an inch, while the new one is roughly 1/2 of an inch, measuring from front to the back of the helmet. Cosmetically, the Space Marine 2 version laurels are very bright gold, then the original release is more of a bronze or copper color, which I actually like the gold version better. The lenses are clearly very different in that the new one has the LED lights in them, and this original version, well, only has the matte red color, which I do prefer the LED version. Finally, I feel as if the bionic eye and overall detail is more fleshed out and more robust in the retooled version. Now looking back on the bare-headed old version, the hair of Calgar looks pretty wild with the black recesses and white highlights. While I do appreciate these highlights up here, I feel as if they look wildly out of place and give this weird fake look to it. The Space Marine 2 version looks more refined and consistent with the thinner strands of hair. Interestingly enough, I do find that the bionic eye proportions are more accurate on the OG one, but overall the level of detail is much better with the video game Calgar that I have in my hands. Moving to the right pauldron, we can clearly see 2 massive double Aquillas. There are 2 major differences that jump out at me. Again, the old version is not really gold, it is more of a copper bronze color, while this new Calgar has a very bright gold, which is more accurate, and I prefer this one as well. Another thing is that the patterning of the feathers is more complex and developed looking, especially when you take a look at the OG version. On the other pauldron, you get the same level of amped up detail with the skull of this new one, and this gold patterning over here is way more refined and visually pleasing, while the old one just looks more basic and unrefined. Also, this Space Marine 2 version 4 attachment is far superior than this flappy version 2 one, in which I am not a fan of at all. Alright, the chest of old Calgar looks way too narrow and compressed to fit a chapter master of his size and stature. JoyToy got it right on the new one, as the chest is wider and more prominent. The weaving or braiding on the cords looks like the features are more sophisticated and cultured, while this original version looks more brute forced, almost akin to comparing a mace to a basic caveman's club. This is the same with the double Aquila pendant that is hanging off his chest too. Regarding the torso, I wanted to point out that the shape of the OG one is more of a teardrop shape rather than this more broad, almost inverted trapezoidal shape. This teardrop shape of old man Calgar just makes him look more compressed and squished. Interesting enough, I find the waist of both of these chapter masters to be relatively equal in detail, but again, you will hear me say that the attributes of the Space Marine 2 version is more polished and cultured. I would argue that the Ultramarines Purity Seal and the regular Purity Seal are on par with each other, as you can see the minute scrawl on the banner part of the Purity Seal. Regarding the leather tabard or balteo, while they are at least shaded, they look too smooth and have no real character associated to them. However, I do like the bend in the tabard, which connotes motion. Then on the flip side, you have the highlighted tabards, the battle damage leather of the video game version Chapter Master, which is, again, I believe far superior than the OG one. The decorations on the tassets right here are more avant-garde than the simple Neanderthal-like designs of the previous one. What can I say about the legs that I have not said already about the whole action figure comparison? Well, nothing that I would care to repeat. You have heard me say that the new one's detail is more advanced than the old one, so I'm not going to explain or dwell on this area too much, but slightly pause and let your eyes pick out the differences between the left and right legs. I really like the iron halo that sits atop new Calgar's backpack. The ornate weave around the halo area really gives this section of the action figure this subtle character, while original Calgar has, well, kind of a plain and unadorned bronze ring. I suppose the same can be said of the detail of the eagles, as well as the drum magazine. And this is OG Calgar in comparison of the two areas that I mentioned. However, the one thing that these older versions of figures have over the newer ones is the level of shading that is found between these armor panels right here. But sadly, the painting aspect does not make up for the overall deficiencies when you compare the old to the new. The capes of the Calgars look equally as flowy and highly shaded, so I'm glad that at least has not changed. I do not have a preference of one over the other, so at least JoyToy remains consistent in that aspect. What I do find interesting, however, is the Space Marine 2 version of Calgar has an entirely red cape front and back, while the OG one is a tan color complete with a U in each corner. Finally, we get the most famous weapon of Calgar, which are the gauntlets of Ultramar. The power fits of the gauntlet both have the same U with the flaming wing skull patterning. At least JoyToy is consistent in that aspect. Weirdly enough, the symbols such as the skulls and these circles are larger in the OG version, which is interesting that you have a smaller footprint with larger detailing. The same goes for this ammo belt too, with the OG version being a lot thicker than the new one. However, you can tell the new one has a longer ammo belt along with a more flexible cable right here. I don't really remember, but I believe in the original review of Older Man Calgar, I complained or pointed out about the lack of mobility due to this length of the ammo belt, as well as these cables. Thankfully, JoyToy fixed this issue on the new one by giving more flexible plastic, as well as longer cables. Now with the shooting part of the gauntlets, I really do like these spent rounds out here that are spilling out versus the Space Marine 2 version, which adopts a super clean look. Again, I would have to say that there is more detail that is given to the new version versus the old one right here. While the options and accessories are slim on both of the Calgars, at least on the newly released version, they include the extra 2 hands over there, so at least we have a choice of what hands to use. Well, the differences between these two Calgars is obviously very vast. We have seen in the past 2 years how much JoyToy has progressed in their manufacturing skills, and if they really want to put in the level of detail, they can. So obviously from the review, you can already tell that I favor this new Calgar versus the old one. The size and stature of the new one looks more bold and regal compared to the older one. When I display my Space Marine 2 Calgar in my display cabinet next to the rest of his Ultramarine subordinates, he stands a cut above every single one of them, and the rest of the figures just pale in comparison to the Chapter Master. It used to be when I displayed the Older Man Calgar that he just blended in with the rest of the blueberry patches, and I think that that was one of my biggest complaints, in that he just looked like all of them and not really befitting of the look of a Chapter Master. I believe that the answer is pretty obvious, in that if you were given the choice between buying the old version versus the new one is obviously the only way to go. Oh, where should you buy the new one? Just click on the link in the description below, where you will be brought to David Toys. They are my preferred website to get these excellent action figures, just because the option of free shipping, and now they've moved quite a few of their action figures to a US warehouse, which means even quicker shipping to your doorstep. And don't forget to use my affiliate code SNS to receive 12% off your purchase, because me helping you with the promo code also helps me in return. So we mutually benefit. Well, members of the chapter, let me know what you thought of this comparison video. I'm really curious to see exactly what you thought of it. Were there things that I needed to cover more, or were there things in which I missed that you wanted to see? Just let me know in the comment section. And unfortunately, there are not many more Space Marine 2 action figures that we can review. The only thing that are left are basically the comparison between the old Victrix Guard versus the new one, and the newly released Space Marine and Relic Secundus armor. So look for those videos in the future. And with that being said, I'll see you all in the next one.